Ramblings of a Music Teacher, Episode 5. Eat your vegetables. We all know that we need to eat our vegetables for health, but they are not always the most tasty. Maybe you have memories of childhood when parents told you to eat them, or maybe that is still the case. Now, I want you to imagine your least favourite vegetable. Okay, you can just about bear it, but given the choice, you'd rather not. Now imagine next to this vegetable something you really like. If you had to eat both, which do you eat first? Most people I have asked would say the vegetable, or the least favourite thing, to get it out of the way and finish with that nice taste in your mouth. So what's all that got to do with music? I use this analogy with many of my students who don't like practicing scales. I get them to compare their least favourite vegetable, let's say it's carrots for example, to scales. They are good for you, and if you do them at the beginning of your practice and get them out the way, then you can finish with the things you enjoy more. Let me know in the comments below what you usually eat first on a dinner plate, and what do you usually start your practice with? More than that, scales are a good way to warm up your fingers, and I would even transfer this idea into the exam room. In ABRSM exams, you are given the option of starting the exam with your pieces or your scales. I would always recommend scales for the following reasons. Number 1. Like I said, they are a good warm-up for your fingers. That said, for pianists, even before the exam starts, you are allowed to try out the piano. And here also I would suggest playing a relatively easy scale. Number 2. You are likely to be more nervous at the beginning of an exam than at the end. And scales are done one at a time, so that in the worst case scenario, where you mess up one scale because of nerves, you can regain your composure for the next. The same is not so easy mid-flow during a piece. One mistake tends to fluster the individual, and it is often the case that this mistake will play on your mind, distracting you and making you lose concentration, leading to other mistakes afterwards. Number 3. Scales in the exam carry less marks than pieces. So linked to my last point about nerves, you have less to lose if nerves cause a little mishap. Number 4. Well-prepared scales should be the easiest part of the exam. This might be slightly controversial, but if you look at the marking criteria for an ABRSM exam, pieces score more heavily on musicality, whereas scales are more technical. Because of this, it is easier to get full marks on scales, whereas a full mark on pieces is very rare. This is my experience both personally and with my students. Many years ago, when I was going through the grading system, scales was the only section I was consistently able to score full marks on. So going back to the exam and the question of nerves, if you have prepared your scales well and execute them well in the exam, it is a great confidence boost for the rest of the exam. I have prepared a separate video on how to pass the scales section of an ABRSM exam, and there will be a suggested video card shown at the end of this video if you want some more advice on this subject. With all that said, if you are going to do your scales first in the exam, why not get used to doing them first in everyday practice? The next time you sit down at the piano or whatever other instrument you play, say to yourself, I need to eat my carrots first. Please let me know in the comments below your experience of nerves in the exam and how you deal with them, and maybe I could include in a future podcast some of your thoughts. As always, Thanks for listening, and see you next Thursday for more ramblings of a music teacher.